Hi there, I'm Dave Clements. I am the technical support analyst for Blueberry Podcasting, which means I work on the support team and I've probably answered some of your tickets. This video is a walkthrough of the PowerPress theme that comes with our basic WordPress sites that come free with your media hosting plan. We developed this for those of you who wanted to take advantage of this free site and aren't quite sure how to customize things. Let's get into it. What you're looking at right now is a very generic version of the PowerPress theme. This is basically what's installed when you launch your site for the first time and you decide to preview it. Maybe you want to incorporate your own branding into the design. That's always a big thing for me when I design sites. I'm always trying to make sure that the way my podcast feels when you listen to it is conveyed through the website. So let's go over to the WordPress dashboard here and let's change the title. As you could tell before, it said my podcast, a PowerPress site. Obviously, it's cool that it's a PowerPress site, but not everybody needs to know that, and it doesn't really have anything to do with our podcast. So in order to change the title and subtitle of your site, go to Appearance, Customize. All right, you're going to see these options here on the left-hand side. Go to Site Identity. Then go ahead and change your site title to the name of your podcast. That's generally the best thing to do because people are going to recognize, hey, this site belongs to this podcast. We're going to work on a fictitious website here, or a podcast rather. We're going to call it Dave Talks Games. All right, we're going to call this site Dave Talks Games. And just for fun, let's add a tagline on the internet. As you can see, I've done this before. All right, underneath here, you're going to notice that it says site icon. In some browsers, in most browsers actually, some websites will show a little icon. So let's go to blueberry.com here. And you'll see the little blue blueberry in the tab, whereas you don't see an icon in either of these tabs. So we'll go back to our customization here, and you can upload a file, and it should be at least 512 by 512 pixels square. I recommend using a PNG so that you get that transparent background. This is the image I've uploaded. It's a controller. There's a lot of detail, so it's not going to show up incredibly great, but you can see it right here in the top of this tab that we're on now. That's all we're going to do here, so let's go ahead and publish and hit the X to go back. That's really all you're going to do as far as that appearance customize area. The majority of your changes are going to happen within the PowerPress theme section. So click this menu item with the gear and let's get started. Going up to the Getting Started section, you're going to see a couple of choices, and let's walk through them real quick because this part right here is really the easiest way to customize and get a quick feel for what your site is going to look like. This is kind of the base level, and I recommend doing this so you can kind of play around with what you're thinking of doing. With the page layout, you can decide whether or not you want the content on the left or the right, and whether you want the sidebar on the right or the left. I'm a fan of the content on the left, sidebar on the right theme, so that's where I'm going to stick. But down here, you have theme color schemes. We have lots of schemes to choose from, and this is, like I said, a very good base for your website. It's not going to do everything for you, but it's going to do a lot of setting the default colors. Now, I really like the blue, and I think we're just going to stick with the blueberry preset, which is what I was already using. But for example, let's say I wanted to go with black. Let's go with this default. It says settings imported, and this does this automatically when you select it. We'll click Save Changes just to make sure. It says settings changed, or settings saved, rather. Let's go back to our preview window. Refresh the window. As you can see, that made the header background this dark gray. The navigation menu is almost black, and it has changed the headings to black. You know, it's a good start. Next, go into header. You're going to want to set a header logo, which I recommend using any artwork that is on your podcast cover art. Now, I do not recommend actually uploading the podcast cover artwork that you're using, because that is a 1400 by 1400 pixel square file, generally, unless you're doing the max at 3000 by 3000. Regardless, it's square, and we don't want a square image here. The theme template calls for a 360 pixel by 220 pixel image. Again, you can go with a PNG file and set the background as transparent and put your podcast logo within those dimensions. That's what I've done. I have already uploaded the logo for my fictitious podcast here. And as you can see, it's 360 by 220. It's a little hard to see because it is white, but you could change that to any color when you're developing it within Photoshop, or if you have a graphic designer that you're working with, you know, you may have to customize things to make it work the way you want to, but I kind of know the aesthetic that I'm going for. So we'll click select, and it says settings have changed. You should save them. Before we save them though, we have the option. Do we want the header navigation above this header logo or below? It's currently set to below, so we can go to the preview here. This is your navigation. This is your menu. Do we want it here? Do we want it above? I think I'm going to go ahead and leave it below because it kind of breaks up the title of the podcast from the main content area. Switching back over to theme options, let's just go ahead and save. Settings have saved. And let's refresh our preview here. All right, as you can see, I have the logo right here. Disregard this tiny text here. This is for my own knowledge, I guess. It's just basically saying what size the pixels are for that particular image. So that looks pretty good to me, but I want to bring forward that blue aesthetic that I had in my site icon here. To do that, you're going to go down to Customize Theme. You're going to add the header background color or image. I have mine uploaded. And this image should be 1200 by 220 pixels, or 226 pixels. The reason that I suggest such a large image, or at least such a wide image, is so that it doesn't get trimmed if somebody has a bigger display, and it doesn't look funny if you're using too small of a display. So this will kind of bleed over the edge. That's why I used a repeating pattern within the image. Alternatively, you could upload some kind of an image and set it to repeat using these options here. And let's check our preview. All right, again, I added this here so you can make notes. It's also in the documentation that we have for the PowerPress theme. With the site background, I recommend that you leave it the color that the theme already has. This is white here, or this is a gray, this is white. If I wanted to, I could technically set it to white, which I just might actually, so that my content and my background don't look too dissimilar, and it all kind of looks like one big section down here. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. And we're going to go to colors. Colors is where you're really going to get into customizing a lot of your site. As you can see, the header color for the site description text, if we didn't have this image here, because maybe you don't have an image that you want to use, you just want to update the text like we did in the very first step when we started, And now we just want to change the color. You would do that here. The navigation, which you can find here again, you're going to change the colors here. I kind of like the black. It's a good definite, transition from the top of the site to the content area. But if I wanted to, we could get really wild, just for example, and turn it red. We'll preview that so I can show you that this is where it's making a change. But I think we're going to switch it back to black. So all of these are very customizable. You can do really whatever you want. The content area background, that is where your posts live. If you remember just seconds ago, this was a light gray area. This was white. If I wanted, I could set this to that same light gray, save my changes, and refresh, and this is darker. Now, buttons you are rarely going to see, and I don't have any good examples of buttons on the site, but if you have buttons, usually within a contact form, this is the setting that you're going to use. Now, because basic PowerPress sites don't include a contact form in the plugins, you may not be using these. But again, if you have theme colors, you can change them so that if you end up adding buttons, whether it's in the Gutenberg editor or some other buttons, it adapts this code. The widget background color, your widgets are here in the sidebar. Let's refresh this so our settings are correct. It will be what is inside this block here. You have your footer and your footer widgets. Again, you're really just changing colors here and working with whatever branding that you have. Any changes that you make sure that you save them as you go so you don't forget. This always reminds you. Links and borders can be changed in the links and borders area. And you have site-wide links, which will change every link on the site. So if I wanted to, I could go to a red regular and a darker red hover. We're going to do this just for dramatic effect. But if you notice, the menu did not change, and these links changed, and our sidebar widget links did not change, which is great because maybe you want to change them independently of each other. We give you that option. So I'm going to go back to the default here, save because I like the blue. You can change the site title color, which again is if you are not using this image. So you also have the ability to change the sidebar and footer widget borders and the footer links themselves. So you can see all of this stuff here. Again, there's a lot of customization that can be done with this theme. It just takes a little while and you have to understand what you're looking at. But I encourage you to play around as you go. Moving into typography, you can really customize the look and feel of the site. I recommend not going too crazy, but if you have a specific font that you're using within your artwork, it may not be a terrible idea to convey that in some of your headings or your body font or something like that. For me, I'm using the font Roboto for my Dave Talks Games on the Internet podcast and in the logo. So I actually want to use Roboto in my heading fonts. So we'll go ahead and save that. And just to be safe, because sometimes this header is used in other places on the site, we're going to change that to Roboto as well. All right, we saved our settings. We're going to go and we're going to update. Now, that is a very, very small kind of change, but it did change. And you'll notice that because I changed the header option, that the titles for my blog posts and my episode posts have changed as well. If I want to further edit these, I could. Maybe they're a little bit too big for my taste, and I can refresh, and you should see the size change. All right, let's save our changes, and let's hit the footer. There's not a lot here, but if you wanted to add a copyright or some other links, that would be really cool. You can see where we have links set up on the Blueberry page. Maybe you have similar things that you want to add, and you can add them in this footer text area. Finally, posts. There are a couple of options that you could use if you would like to further give your site more personality. You could use featured images, which I will show you real quick. I didn't have them enabled and I didn't have anything uploaded, but if I wanted to, I could go into one of these posts and upload a featured image, which I will do now. So if I go to posts, let's go with our second post because it's the one there on top. Scroll down to set featured image. And then you will upload a file from your computer. I actually haven't done this yet, so I'm going to do it now. All right, featured images need to be 800 by 400 pixels, otherwise they're going to get cut off when you upload them. They're going to get cropped, and there is no walkthrough of how you want to crop it. They are just simply 800 by 400 pixel images. You can update that post. Let's go back to the preview and refresh, and there you go. Now, you can go smaller as far as the height, but the width has to be 800 because a lot of people would say, oh my goodness, that is a huge image. I don't need an image that large. I get it. Not a problem. Just keep that 800 width. One of the other options that you have within your posts is whether to use excerpts or show the full post. Looking at my site, you can see that I'm just using the excerpt. What this will do is it will trim things down, and you can put like a 1-sentence description of the episode so that if you have a lot of episodes and posts showing on your main page, you can, save a little bit of space. So I recommend using excerpts that can also change the way that your show notes show up in podcast apps. So it's completely up to you, just like all of this is. You'll also notice that there are two other menu items within your PowerPress theme options, and one is custom CSS and the other is import export. If you are not aware of what you're doing, if you're not a developer, if you're not a web designer, and you don't know what these things do, we recommend not messing with them because it's possible you could break your site. I'm not going to mess with them because I don't know what I'm doing. But overall, that is how you customize your PowerPress theme on your WordPress site. If you have any questions, let us know. Go to blueberry.com/support or send a support email to support@blueberry.com, and we're more than happy to help you. We're not web designers, but we can probably steer you in the right direction. All right, thanks for watching, and happy podcasting.